Well, hello, 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 everybody. This is Reverend Karen and Fearlessly Feral Living. And I have an impromptu sort of podcast episode for you. I just created this yesterday, and I created it as a result of several conversations that I had had both yesterday morning and just a day or two previous. And they all pointed to the same thing, and that thing is unlimited possibilities. So that's what I'm going to talk about today after I give you my absolutely wonderful introduction that you've heard many times before. Welcome to Fearlessly Feral Living, broadcasting to you from the Woogie Ranch out here in the back 40 of northwestern Nevada, where I'm a half an hour away from the nearest gas station and the nearest grocery store. And of course, a neighbor of mine said, Karen, that's wrong. You're being inaccurate. There's a gas station close by. Yes, there is. There's a gas station very close to my house at Topaz Lake. Topaz Lake it caters to tourists and travelers. The gas is very, very expensive there. So, no, I don't really count it in the list of gas stations, although I can use it in an emergency. For example, if my snowblower runs out of gas, I can run over the Topaz Lake gas station really quick and fill up my gas cans. So, yeah, there's that. The grocery stores, well, we have a couple of little markets here close by, but no grocery stores. So there you have it. In the interest of accuracy, and our mission here at Fearlessly Feral is to provide a strong and unshakable inner foundation that works for long-term successful living. Our purpose is to activate inner self-awareness, and our vision is a world in which everyone lives wild and free. So, what is this about unlimited possibility? Possibilities. I want to make it plural. Unlimited possibilities. So here's the deal. I believe in unlimited possibilities. Unlimited possibilities are the premise upon which Fearlessly Feral is based. And unlimited possibilities is also how I like to think I live my life. And the truth is that in most areas, I do live in the realm of unlimited possibilities. Now, if you're just tuning into this podcast and you've never listened to me before, living in unlimited possibilities means that sooner or later, one manifests those unlimited possibilities, usually sooner rather than later, because that's how this thing that I teach called Science of Mind works. We believe in the power of our thinking. We believe in the power of affirmative prayer, what we call treatment around here. And if you do a treatment, hang on, because whatever you're treating for is going to manifest. If you have a pattern of thinking, hang on, because whatever that pattern is going to manifest. You are going to experience it. That's where the unlimited possibilities live, because we can affirm that, we can instill that into our patterns of thinking, we can set intentions for those unlimited possibilities, and they are going to happen, except when they don't. Now, just yesterday morning, I found myself saying, yeah, but, and yeah, there's a yeah, but there. And there's a couple of them. There's actually 3 of them. One of them comes from me. I live and I believe in unlimited possibilities, except there's an exception. And I debated whether or not to tell you what the exception was, and I think I'm going to. I'm just going to throw it out there for you. So, yesterday, one of the conversations I was having was with a prayer partner, and I was just rambling on about the events of my week since I had last spoken with her, trying to come up with a treatment request because actually everything was going quite well. And as I was talking, I realized that what I wanted treatment for was something that is always present for me. It's usually running in the background, like an app running in the background of a computer, but it's always there. Here's the deal. I long for partnership. I long for a partner in life. My husband died 5 years. It'll be 5 years in August. Honestly, before he and I got married, I longed. I longed for this partner in life. And a part of me had given up and said, it's just not possible. It's just not possible. Now that he's gone, I long. But I live in a demographic that is, well, let's just put it this way. I'm surrounded by people who do not believe as I believe. I am surrounded by people who believe in things that I very strongly do not believe in. I live in the wrong demographic to find a partner here. I'm setting a limitation on my desire to have a partner. That's a limitation. I also have this belief that being 70 years old, most of the guys who are of my generation believe in a patriarchal society. It's just the way they were raised. It's just the way they were raised. They practice misogyny without even realizing it. And I believe in equality. I believe in equal partnerships. I don't believe that men have certain roles and women have certain roles and that we have to conform to those roles. If my guy wants to cook in the kitchen, you go for it, dude. I'll do the dishes, or vice versa. So that's another limitation that I have set for myself. So my treatment request was not for a partner in life, but to remove the limitations. And that's what she treated for me. So that's my limitation. If you're in my age bracket and you believe in equality and you're a male, because in spite of the fact that I am woke and liberal and believe that love is love, I am most decidedly heterosexual. Contact me. Let's talk. So there it is. I'm throwing it out there. So anyway, here's some other things that go on with unlimited possibilities with other people. So as I was talking with this same prayer partner that morning, yesterday morning, she gave me a request for what she wanted treatment for. And I said, or something better, or more. And I said something along the lines of, I'm going to treat for unlimited possibilities for you in this situation. And she said, I don't believe in that. I can't believe in that with this situation. And I went, oh, okay. So we talked about that, and we got to the point where I could phrase things in such a way that she could actually believe them and accept them. Because if she can't believe in what I'm saying, there's a limitation there that she's placing on herself. I can believe it for her, but she can null that belief. She can void it by not believing in it. So we got to this place where she's like, okay, I can go there. And then I was talking with someone else about unlimited possibilities. And she said, I do not know how to believe in unlimited possibilities. And I thought to myself, but, 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 yeah, but I don't understand how you cannot know how to believe in unlimited possibilities, how you cannot know how to get there. So here I was thinking about all this stuff and realizing that there's a lot of folks, including me, who set our own limitations for us in our life. And if it was there for me and it was there for the other 3 people that I spoke with this last week, then it might be there for you too. So I decided to do a podcast about it. And Ernest Holmes speaks to this. In the Science of Mind textbook, there's a section there. First of all, there's a chapter called The Power of Thought. So you go to our main textbook, the book that Ernest Holmes, our founder, wrote, that is the core of our teaching. And there's a chapter in there called The Power of Thought. And in that chapter is a section titled, We Set Our Own Limitations. And in that section, Holmes speaks about how we set our own limitations by our own thinking, and that we can only change those limitations by changing our thinking. And then he gives an example. He talks about how the prodigal son in the Bible was always a prodigal son until he made the decision that he was no longer the prodigal son. And then what happened after that? He was welcomed home with open arms and abundance. But he changed his thinking. He made the decision. So that's a clue. That's a hint. If we are experiencing limitation in our life, we have to change our thinking. We just do. So there's one thing to do. And, I go through life believing that life is just one big series of beautiful opportunities for expansion into what I call the next greatest level of living. But along with that belief comes this thing. It comes along with it. I've just turned my life into a series of lessons. And yeah, sometimes I get real tired of that. But then I emerge from a lesson in my next greatest level of existence. And I'm like, oh yeah, this is great. This is wonderful. Let's do some more of this. So there's a trade-off there. Again, this is what I believe in. And this is what I'm manifesting in my life. My point here is whatever you believe in is what you're going to manifest. What you're going to manifest. So back to my own self-imposed limitation. And I realized that if I start to go into believing that it is entirely possible and probable that I'm going to soon have a partner in my life, someone to share my life with, all this fear comes up. And I'm like, yeah, but what if, what if you have to move? What if he wants to come live with you? What if, whatever, what if? Yeah, but. I start, all those fearful things come up, and I start second guessing and once again limiting myself. And then I blow it all out of proportion, and then it doesn't happen. So I'm going back and forth with this thing. I'm going back and forth. And I have to remember that where I'm at today is in a really, really, really good place. And there have been times in my life when I purposely changed my thinking to get rid of limitations, where I purposely and wholeheartedly went into the land of unlimited possibilities with full recognition of everything that came along with that, and joyously accepted the whole assignment. And I never did limit myself in those areas. And that's how we do this thing. Sometimes we don't limit ourselves. Sometimes we live in a full, beautiful life that is so unlimited and so full of abundance that I don't know about you, but I look at my life sometimes and I'm like, wow, this is really cool. The way things turned out. This is really cool. And I tend to think in black and white. So, then I'm asking myself, well, do I believe in unlimited possibilities or don't I? Well, I do, except when I don't. Oh, my goodness. So off we go with this. Off we go. And, some people, when they're presented with evidence that they are limiting their life, They're not even willing or able to contemplate that they could live it any other way. And some other folks are not even willing to contemplate that they could learn how to live in the land of unlimited possibilities. So I want to give you a couple more tidbits about how to do that if you're interested. Now, you may not be interested. You might be perfectly happy hanging out where you're at now. But if you're experiencing an area of your life where you're just, where you've given up, or where you want something so bad and it's just not happening, you might want to think about what I'm going to present to you here. So I'm going to go back to the land and the time of our ancestors real briefly. Now, our ancestors, before religion came in and stirred everything up, our ancestors used to worship different gods. And they knew there was a god of the sun and a god of the moon. And they knew the god of the sun was very, very, very powerful, the most powerful god of all. The god of the moon wasn't quite as powerful. Guess which one they worshiped? They worshiped the god of the moon because it was more accessible to them. The god of the sun was not accessible. They couldn't get there. They limited themselves. They limited themselves. So, and I'm thinking about limited possibilities and unlimited possibilities. And, I'm offering a class that begins on Tuesday. You can still sign up for it. It's called Breaking the Mold. And the object of this class is to facilitate living in unlimited possibilities. And I came up with the concept of breaking the mold in one of those flashes of insight. And I tried to explain the concept to a friend of mine, and she just wasn't getting it. And that was when I realized, after we talked about it, that she simply did not know how to live in the land of unlimited possibilities. She didn't know what to do to get there. And so in this class, I'm going to explain what to do to get there. And I'm also going to explain a little bit about it in this podcast. But, I marketed this class like I've marketed nothing else in a really long time. I have almost 3,000 friends on Facebook. I marketed it there. I promoted it on Blue Sky and Substack. I announced it in my newsletter that I email it out. I announced it in the newsletter of the center where I'm serving as interim. I promoted it on my own website. I promoted it on my own podcast. I've got another podcast episode about breaking the mold. In my podcast, I have listeners in 400 cities across 34 countries worldwide. Guess how many people are signed up for this class? 6. Do you think there might be an issue there with people not only living in limited possibilities, but being unwilling or unable to acknowledge that there might be a way to remove those limitations? I think so. As for me, I'm really happy for the 6 people that signed up, because they're going to start living in unlimited possibilities really soon here. Really soon. And I began to ponder, okay, why is this so? What's happening here? What's going on here? And here's another thing I came up with. We have stories. We have big, huge, dramatic and traumatic stories, and we make decisions based on those stories, and we live the way we live because of those stories. And there's an illusion of safety that we have when we stay in those stories. And the reason why it feels safe is because it's familiar. We've lived that way our entire life. These stories were formed when we were little kids. And honestly, we're still living that way. We're still living in those stories. And it feels safe. But it's the feeling of safety It's the same thing that makes abused people stay with their abuser, because the thought of leaving them and going into the unknown is more frightening than the thought of staying and getting continuously abused, even if it ends up with them being killed. It's that insidious. So here I am over here as a minister afflicting the comfortable, is what some of us like to say. And so far, 6 people are willing to be afflicted with this concept of living in unlimited possibilities. And I was reminded of this movie. It's called Raiders of the Lost Ark. And the main character in the movie is Indiana Jones. And he's off on this adventure to find the lost ark, I guess. And in this movie, he encounters a deep, almost bottomless gully. And he has to get to the other side of this gully. And there's no path to that other side that he can see until, he ponders it for a while and he figures out there is a path. He just needs to have faith in order to be able to see it. He just needs to believe in order to be able to see the path. And with a flash of insight, it just being willing to believe, he had a flash of insight and he threw some sand into the gully. And guess what? The sand didn't fall to the gully because there was a pathway there that got illuminated when the sand fell on it. The path became, quote unquote, magically visible just by being willing to believe. That's how we can move into the land of unlimited possibilities. We have to be willing to believe that it's possible. Just be willing. That's all. So we've got to change our thinking. We've got being willing to believe that it's possible. And now we have to be able to be willing to explore all the spiritual tools that are available to us to use to get to those possibilities. With this kind of stuff, I test it a lot. I have conversations. I say, okay, I'm going to test this one. I'm going to believe this, and you show me how it's true. I'm not really having a conversation with God because God is within me. Mostly I'm having a conversation with this thing we call the law. I am testing the law. And I'm just testing it. And then once I start to believe a little bit, once I start to be willing to believe even more, then we have this beautiful thing here called the creative process. And it has a whole bunch of stuff to do with thoughts and law and manifestation, and the metaphorical example we use for that is seed soil plant. We take the seeds, we nourish the soil, we plant the seed in the soil, and we get the plant. The seeds are our thoughts. And I like to play this little game with this creative process called what if. So if I get to a place where I'm able to even become willing to change my thinking, and I get to a place where I'm willing to believe that it is possible to live in the land of unlimited possibilities by changing my thinking and having some faith, then I move into that creative process and I play a little game called What If? And I ask myself, what if? So what if Mr. Right now shows up in my life? What if Mr. Right forever shows up in my life? What if? And I begin to visualize and envision and feel what it would be like to have a partner. And I play with this thing. I play with where we're living. I play with it, with what it's like on a daily basis. I play with what he looks like. I play with all of it. And I just start, I start with a simple vision and then I start to populate it. And I remove all the limitations and I just play with it. And then I imagine how that feels. If it were to come true, how would it feel? And you know what? That feeling there, that's where the stuff is. That's where the power is. Because if you can feel it in a vision, if you can feel it in your imagination, then it is possible. And you can recreate that feeling whenever you want. And every time you recreate that feeling, you cement that intention. And every time you recreate that feeling, you grow ever closer to living in the land of unlimited possibilities. We'd be able to come to the point where we can step out in faith. We can step out in faith. So I feel like this podcast has been a little scattered. I wrote it just yesterday and I did tweak it a little bit. I hope you get something out of this. But I want to go back to that quote in the Science of Mind textbook, that section where Ernest Holmes talks about how we can live in the land of unlimited possibilities by changing our thinking. And he says this, and this is all in caps. Now, in this textbook, when something is all in caps, it means it's really important. So here's what he says. Daily, we must control all thought that denies the real. Affirm the divine presence within us. And then, as the mist disappears before the sun, so shall adversity melt before the shining radiance of our exalted thought. Isn't that a beautiful quote? So what he's saying in no uncertain terms is that we must daily change our thinking to the focus on possibilities. We don't think anymore about limitations. We think about unlimited possibilities. That's where we focus our thinking. And then he makes a promise. He says the mist will disappear, just like the pathway appeared in Indiana Jones. The mist will disappear, adversity will melt, and our thoughts will be exalted. You know, Mr. Right could move in 2 doors down, replace one of those other folks that live out there. Who knows? Who knows? Isn't that wonderful? We don't have to prescribe the way it's going to happen. We just have to know it's going to happen. We don't have to limit ourselves by sticking to our story. We can create a new story and live in that story for a while. So that's what I encourage you to do. If you're living in a story, an old story from something that happened in your childhood, I don't care how dramatic or traumatic it was. I've got the drama and the trauma too. We don't have to live there anymore. We can move out of that. We can create a new story just by playing the what if game. Create a new story and live there for a while and just try it. I want to know what happens when you try that. I really do. I want to know what happens when you change your thinking. I want to know what happens when you change the focus of your thinking. I want to know what results for you, what manifests for you in terms of living in the land of unlimited possibilities. Please keep me posted. And so that's my message for this particular episode. And I thank you very much for listening and for your support. I am knowing fearlessly feral living for me and for you. And a reminder that Fearlessly Feral Living is a focus ministry of Centers for Spiritual Living, which means that your financial support is fully tax deductible. You can support the podcast with even a $3 a month donation. Every little bit helps. You can do a one-time donation by going to our PayPal page. And all these links and more information are on our website at fearlesslyferal.org. That's fearlesslyferal.org. And until then, yes, thank you so much for listening. And I am knowing fearlessly feral living for you and for me.